Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info coming at you from the conclusion of the thrilling weekend of bizarre racing at the Nashville Super Speedway, the first Cup Series race there ever, and the return of the Xfinity and the Truck Series there after a full decade away from the track. A lot to go over, not the least of which being Kyle Larson dominating yet again and showing that there is, while brakes issues were certainly a problem for many people in the Cup Series field today, there was nothing slowing down that number 5 car from reaching victory lane again. Again, pending post-race inspection, of course. He is your winner today once again in Nashville as we head to a Pocono doubleheader, whereas somebody pointed out already on Twitter, he has a chance of winning twice in the same weekend. And we'll find out if that's going to be the case. So certainly for the show today, we'll be talking about the action from there. Ross Chastain right off the bat. Got to congratulate him on a fantastic run there, working his way through the field, even breaking up the Hendrick group there. Chastain has really turned things around since Coda when he had that great run where he was again challenging Hendrick guys at the front of the field and just ran out of time at the end. This very similar story here, Larson having far and away the lead, but Chastain really working on getting a good finish out there. Yeah, plenty to certainly talk about. We'll jump right in with our last place finisher for today's race being Quinn Houff, having again another difficult weekend here and exceptionally so in this case. The first time this year, driver failed to complete the opening lap of a Cup Series race, and even shorter distance than the last time it happened. Last year in May at Charlotte, when they had the Wednesday race, there was an incident with Garrett Smithley driving for Rick Ware's team, and they had a problem where he actually knocked down the outside wall and finished further back in the order. But in this time around, that happened actually in turns 3 and 4. This time you had a situation where it happened in turn 1. Quinn Houff had already started in the back of the field. It looked like there were some of the leaders having trouble catching traction at the front of the pack. But further back there, Quinn Houff had what looked to be a tire failure. Seemed at first that the hub had failed because the whole right front had broken away from the car. But it seems after the later replay, and good job by NBC for catching this, that the tire was still on the car, at least the wheel was still on the car at the time, and it hit the wall and knocked it off after the impact. Now, we didn't see that from any other crashes that we saw today, and there were many, which may indicate that there was a problem with the hub or a loose wheel. Again, I don't have any other information on that at the moment, but hopefully more information will be revealed along the way. But the result was the same, that an even shorter distance than Smithley's incident in turn 3 in Charlotte, Quinn Houff falls out after a turn 1 and 2 accident at the very beginning of this race. And the 00 is finished last now only for the second time this year. I know some people may be very critical of Quinn and the Starcom racing team, but it's only the second last place finish that he's had this year. And the first actually since the second race of the season at the Daytona Infield Road Course. And that also, I believe, was a very early in the race, so a couple laps in. Houff was actually one of the 2 drivers that finished last in the Pocono doubleheader last year. The other one being Michael McDowell when he got his 34th record last place finish in that event. And then, of course, the 2 of them had very different fortunes in this year's Daytona 500, with McDowell, of course, getting the Daytona 500 victory. So, yeah, an interesting feature on that. Actually, again, we play it by ear from one week to the next. We go from having the Texas All-Star race last week, where it took the entire distance of the race and even past the tail end of the field, getting the checkered flag to settle last place, to this one where it happens very early in the event. Just goes to show that you never can prepare well enough for one scenario or another. Big thanks to the fan that got a picture of the 00 getting towed to the garage area. I'm going to be using that in the article for sure. And that'll be really exciting to talk about as well. An unfortunate deal for the Starcom team, but hopefully things turn around for them the next couple of weeks. Of course, the road course at Road America coming up as well. Always a possibility for teams to turn things around of all sizes. So that'll be something to look at there. Let me pull up the results here. I got this open in another tab. All right. So again, Kyle Larson, your winner. Ross Chastain second. William Byron in the third spot. Eric Almirola with a top 5 finish. Fantastic run for him after winning the pole. Good to see a good turnaround for them. Kevin Harvick in the Gravedigger paint scheme in the 5th spot there. Fantastic for that. Last Bro's a big fan of that paint job as well. He used to be in the Gravedigger fan club as a kid and We actually visited the shop at Kitty Hawk during our trip to between Mosport and Darlington a couple of years ago. So that was kind of a neat way to bring things full circle. I understand the diecast sales are already off the charts on that. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., great breakthrough run. I mentioned earlier, it seemed like this is probably the best run he's had since the Bristol Dirt race, where he was trying to catch Joey Logano at the finish. Great run there. It was certainly very unexpected. I don't remember how he did at the Nashville track back in the Xfinity series last decade ago. I think he was just starting out in the series back then. It was around the same time that he had that one where, what was it, where he blew an engine and Carl Edwards pushed him across the line. I guess that was in Iowa, but, different time period there. But a great run for him. Daniel Suarez in the Tootsie's car, again, another great paint job. Good to see Pitbull at the track this week. I kind of expected to see him out at the All-Star race there, but actually I guess it was good that he wasn't, given that the car fell out of the race very early in the open. But this time around, a great top 10 run with the team owners there, so great finish for them. Kurt Busch in the 8th spot there. Good to turn around a difficult season for him. Christopher Bell, we mentioned the Daytona Road Course, his last win out there after he won his first career win, actually. Seeing the 20 car back up the lineup, coming back from an uncontrolled tire penalty midway through the race, and rounding out the top 10, Joey Logano, up there, the Daytona Road Course and the Bristol Dirt Race winner, rounding out your top 10 there. So also further back in the lineup, it was mentioned in the broadcast, kudos to Dale Jr. for mentioning this, Corey LaJoie with a great 16th place finish for Spire Motorsports. That's 7 car. They've had some mechanics, but kind of remember back to Martinsville when they had a great run going. They finished last in that race, but prior to that, we're having an outside shot at a good top 15 finish. In this race here, where so many other drivers were having all kinds of problems, especially with the brakes, good to see him capitalize on a decent finish. Eric Jones in the same breath, too. He ended up being last car on the lead lap, but had a good qualifying run towards the front of the field for stages of this. Good to see. Again, kind of following up his great run at Sonoma a few weeks ago. Further back, again, surprising who's further back in the lineup. Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. both shown a lap down at the end. Hamlin, again, having to do a last-minute stop at the end of this event. This time, apparently not loose lugs, but just running out of fuel at the end. Truex wasn't a factor the entire day. Had all kinds of problems during the race. It's actually surprising he wasn't any further back than 23rd at the finish. The Rick Ware Racing Team, again, congratulations to Cody Ware on his IndyCar debut, finishing in the 19th spot with a car in one piece. Roman Grosjean did well as well. And actually, Ware finishing ahead of Jimmy Johnson in the lineup there. That's an accomplishment in and of itself. So kudos to the Ware team. And then on the Cup Series side, I know there were some lucky dogs that were a factor along the way, especially with Bilicki and Smithley. But Bilicki and Smithley stayed on the lead lap into the last 30 laps of the race. Ended up being a lap down at the finish. J.J. Yaley getting a good bit of features, not just helping the debris off of Kyle Larson's car, but the fact that Yaley was doing so well even before that in his relief role for Cody Ware, the 51 car. And even Joey Gase, although Gase has had a bit more problem, maintaining a consistent pace than some of his teammates in the few starts that he makes in the car. Even he was staying within about 5 laps of the leader. So that's something to be congratulated, especially with, again, all the mechanical issues and brake issues and multiple other drivers falling further back in the order. And that's where you get back to the back of the pack here. Chase Briscoe, a real heartbreaker for him when his teammates are doing so well there with Harvick and Almirola. Briscoe was actually able to get back up there on some pit strategy, even leading some laps. Best we've really seen out of the 14 all year. Unfortunately, a brake issue on the right rear, much like his other teammate, Cole Custer, dropping him back in the first finishing order there at the back of the field. Chad Fincham and David Starr, the Motorsports Business Management teammates. Good to see them have 2 cars in the Cup Series field for the first time this year, even though they ran both in the Open and the Daytona qualifiers, but this time actually qualifying both cars. Unfortunately, both of them having issues, apparently. Suspension issue there for Fincham and brake issues for David Starr, dropping them back in the field. And, of course, that brings us to the bottom 5 involving Justin Haley with a hard hit. Same thing with Ryan Blaney, Chris Buescher. I mentioned David Starr, and, of course, Quinn Houff rounding out the group there. Have to say, really interested in seeing how competitive the race was. It did seem to be a war of attrition at the beginning, although we did get a nice long green flag run at the end. It was good to see NASCAR let that play out at the finish. It's going to be interesting to see who is going to be running out of fuel. I'm kind of reminded of Jeff Gordon dominating Sears Point back in 2000, where they were trying to interject that with Larson's thing. And even with that big lead, I'm sure they were able to save something there on that stretch. And ultimately he did, pulling off the victory there ahead of Chastain, but not for a lack of effort there. There was a lot of obstacles they had to go through, not just the cars themselves, but again, the debris mentioned earlier to keep the car from overheating. But again, as I mentioned, kind of with Jeff Gordon's run at Darlington back in 2007, a testament to the legacy of Hendrick's motor program and Randy Dorton, the late Randy Dorton, and the program that they have over there, keeping the engine temperature within the range that it needed to be, and didn't have any issues, and were still able to do the burnout at the finish of the race and all of that as well. So great run for them, and certainly good to see on that end. Thank you so much, Alex Viveros, for your super chat here. So GMS is joining Cup. Who do you think gets that ride? I see Noah Gragson getting it, or maybe one of their truck guys. Dark horse could be Ryan Preece. Good point on that one. That's certainly something to talk about. This was a big week with different teams coming into the Cup Series. You mentioned GMS, also, of course, the long speculated arrival now of Matt Collig's effort there, Collig Racing there. I think both those programs will be very interesting to see. Certainly with the Chevy program out there and everybody else trying to figure out the next gen car, it seems like well-heeled teams and especially even satellite operations, as both of those are likely to be, will be in a position that they can actually get some more information and maybe be ahead of even some of the other competition that doesn't have as strong technical alliances here. They'll be interesting to see. But in terms of who's going to drive it, Gregson's a possibility. The fact that he ran the Mark Beard car this year shows that he has a desire to run for teams even outside the JRM banner. That's certainly a possibility. Justin Haley already announced for the primary colleague ride, with Allmendinger doing some rides from there. So it sounds like they're full up, at least for the moment. But having two charters on their end, of course, the issue with Trackhouse on that side is certainly related to it, has been documented already. The lease charter for the 99 apparently going to that second colleague entry. Now, yes, it was pointed out, of course, the Trackhouse was already having to look for a charter, but that timetable got moved up a little bit more with that one being spoken for. And I would think that the cost of getting one from a startup is going to be a lot more than the cost of getting one when you already have a leased one. Potentially a lease to own, I imagine, would be less so. But what they need to do right now is they need to win. Try to get a win, especially before the playoffs, and kind of put themselves in a foothold there that they can get one. We've seen this battle this year between 2311 and the Trackhouse team already. I anticipate that stepping up, as Michael Jordan already indicated at the beginning of the year that he was really hoping that Bubba Wallace gets a win by the end of this season. And I'm sure he's looking especially to get one before the playoffs here to kind of get into the postseason. These last few rounds before we get into the playoffs here, I think, are going to be really stepping it up here. And that'll be one of the storylines to look at. Gregson's certainly a possibility. I know he's had a bit of rough runs here this year in the Xfinity series, but also some strong runs. He's still as much of a loose cannon as ever, but he's entertaining to watch. I'm not going to deny that, but we'll see. Ryan Preece, you mentioned on there. It's certainly a possibility. 37 team. I thought he's done really amazing things with that program, even as an open entry, even though it's just substantially the same program from before, just without the charter. Great efforts that he had at the beginning of this year. Obviously, the winner in the Truck Series race the other night, I think that really improved his stock. It was good to see him get out there and take that victory. We'll see what happens on that end, but I think it's going to be exciting to see. Looking forward on that. He's a talent, and I hope he stays in the sport a good long time. And if it's through another program, I think that's a good way to make sure that happens. So that's another one to look at too. Kaz Gralla, I'm seeing that mentioned in the chat here too. That's another one to look at. So we got that. Oh goodness, I didn't see these other super chats. Let me get these too. Ryan Moore, thank you for your super chat. Does Larson go on a Gordon-esque late 90s tear? I think we're in the middle of it right now. And I've been wrong about this before, as with many things. I know that I came on this show, if you go back in my archive, I think it was for Darlington, when Martin Truex went out there beating Kyle Larson. I was saying, look, this looks like Truex is coming up on a stretch of races that he's going to be utterly dominant at. When we had Sears Point, we had all these other events, and I think he's just going to be crushing them. And then what happened? He had that bad run at Dover, and he's been downhill since then. And we saw more of that today. And ever since then, Kyle Larson, that's all he's needed to kind of break back into it. Now, it can't last forever. Somebody's going to, I think the real question is at this point, who's going to be the one to stop him? Is it going to be one of his teammates? We saw problems with Alex Bowman today, further back in the order, not being able to contend as much with Byron and Chase Elliott. We saw the Hendrick group at the front of the field break up a little bit, but Larson not showing any drop in speed. I think, is it going to be one of his Hendrick teammates, or is it going to be somebody else out there mixing it up? I've been very impressed with Ross Chastain in this stretch. I think he might actually pick things up. I don't know how he does at Pocono. I don't remember him being that good in the Xfinity series there, but we'll see if anything picks up there. Is it going to be somebody like Kyle Busch? He was really off today. I kind of attribute that to the pedigree paint scheme because he always seems like he runs terrible in that car, and unfortunately today was another example of that. I believe the first time he ran it was that Richmond race where he spun out with Dale Jr. and dropped back further in the order. So that was the case on that one. But yeah, I think we're in the middle of it here, and I think the sky's the limit for Larson at the moment. I think where, we'll see what happens at Pocono. Pocono's a tough track. It's broken up good streaks before. The 5-car finished last there at Pocono with Casey Kane when Kane got his first last place finish, spinning out at the entrance of Pit Road. I think it was in 2015. So we'll see what happens. And Larson himself has already had a last place run this year when they didn't take that cover off the radiator at Talladega. So again, he's not infallible, just like any of these other drivers out there. But it makes you wonder, is this going to be a 10-win season? Is it going to be something more than that? It's hard to really predict. And we still got the playoffs, the run to the playoffs, and the playoffs beyond that building up. And we saw today a lot of other contenders further back in the points really trying to get that first win. Your Stenhouse, your Chastain, and so forth. Kurt Busch, can they keep things going? Some guys are getting their feet back under them. But I do think that, it seems like the teammates, if the teammate pack is breaking up a little bit, I was very impressed with Byron today. I think he showed a lot of aggression. Chase Elliott seemed like he had an ill handling card a couple times, but was still able to keep it up there. And we saw Bowman drop off, which is too bad. But if that pack's starting to break up and we're starting to see a real hierarchy here, he doesn't even need really these other guys to throw blocks for him. And again, I can't really think of like Larson's performance at Pocono himself, but next week's going to be very interesting. And the doubleheader, I think that if I were a track promoter at that point, I would be emphasizing that and see if he could sweep both races, because that would be quite the incredible thing as well. We didn't see that last year between the Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick battles, and this year they're going to still come into those races winless, and who knows how that's going to shake out. But Hamlin seems like his spirits were good. I was impressed with his pre-race interview. Seemed like he was keeping the spirits up. I was very pleased with how Harvick did. I'm sure he was, the family man that he is. He was looking to have as good of a run as he could in the Gravedigger car for his son. So that was good to see. Does that mean that, is one of them going to be the guy that's going to stop the Hendrick Express here with engine number 5 there in Larson? I don't know. They had a good shot at it today, the both of them, especially Harvick. But it's going to be tough. And I think in the meantime, wouldn't be surprised if these next couple of weeks, we got Road America coming up. And I know Michael McDowell was excited about that one coming up here after I talked to him at the All-Star race last week. But Larson could just as easily cruise through there with whatever car he had at Sears Point, and that could be the same story in that sense. So going to be a really good stretch. I think we're going into a good stretch of the season here and coming up on all of that. Thank you also to the Super Chat for Beast of Metal. Mentioning here the win streak survived, but the 1-2 streak ends in a tie for the record. Alas, such is the way of things in racing. HMS still rolling along. I mean, again, it's still, again, it's the 1-2 finish thing. It's another thing to look at here with the Hendrick Motorsports program. We talked about the pack kind of breaking up a little bit today, but even with the unpredictability of the race, nobody exceptionally far down the order. Even Bowman he was off, but he wasn't like so off that he was out of the top 20. But again, it's going to be something to kind of look at going forward. But yeah, Hendrick's still rolling along. They're just as tough as ever. And yeah, I'm getting highlights of Gordon in 98 or Gordon and Johnson in 2007 or Johnson and Mark Martin in 2009. We've seen times where these guys with multiple cars are able to be dominant. But Larson's is easily the most dominant I've seen, at least since 2009 with Jimmy. And probably, yeah, I mean, if we get into 98 Gordon territory, it's going to be everybody else. It's probably going to be a foregone conclusion by the time we get to Phoenix. And at the moment, I'll go ahead and mention here that we are looking to do Phoenix for a trackside coverage at the end of this year. And after crunching some numbers here, looking to add Las Vegas to the schedule here, the South Point 400 weekend, kind of figuring out the travel limits and, how many hours it takes to get there. It's about an 8-hour drive from here at Last Car headquarters versus an 11-hour drive for Phoenix, but I think spaced out for a couple months. We're going to look to kind of squeeze that in. So again, thanks to the folks in the Patreon in particular, and those of you spreading those videos out there, that helps out a tremendous amount. So much of that goes into paying off the credit card and getting us some more horsepower so we can do more races. And I definitely want to get you guys as much coverage as you can for your money there, because I know times are tough and everything, and I'm trying to get as much out there for you guys. And these last couple weeks at Texas and Sears Point, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know I did, and I'm looking to do a lot more of it. So if we can squeeze in another race this year, that is the current goal right now in the last week of September, and then Phoenix at the beginning of November. And by then we'll know what the schedule is next year, and we'll have a better idea of what we'll be doing for the first year of the next gen car. So far, at least, going to be Fontana in the spring and Sears Point in June or whenever it's going to be. And beyond that, schedule is pretty wide open at the moment. But again, those of you sharing these videos and join the Patreon, you're a big part of making that possible, and I do appreciate that. So thank you again on that. Let me catch back up on here. Looking again at the lineup, we talked about the Rick Ware teams, Joey Gase and so forth. Resurgence for Stewart-Haas. I think they're hitting the stride at the right time. Wouldn't be surprised if Harvick was decent at Pocono, but it might just take that little bit extra to beat a guy that can regularly not only win, but with the exception of Sears Point, which had a late race restart there, pull off wins by multiple seconds at the finish. That is a whole other thing to be dealing with. And again, that's where I think those comparisons you guys are making with earlier seasons of Hendrick's dominance are very suitable in this case here. Bubba Wallace, scary incident there with that. I mean, did they actually report as to what actually hit the roof of the car? It seemed by all indications that it was brake rotor pieces, because that was a problem so much else in the field. It wasn't the wheel off of Quinn's car, because Quinn was already at the back of the field. And by the time the 23 got back around that first lap, it was on the apron. So at least we knew it wasn't that. It's a freaky situation, much like we saw at Talladega with the roof caved in there a bit. But ends up finishing further down the order. Let's see. But yeah, very pleased with the Rick Ware teams. I think there's a lot you could say about some of these small teams, whether it's, again, Motorsports Business Management, get the 2 cars in, or Rick Ware's effort, able to finish further up the order. Certainly good to see. We'll go over into the Xfinity and the Truck Series race. And before I get into that, that brings up the other big issue from this weekend. And those of you following me on Twitter in particular know exactly what I am talking about. So in the Truck Series race, I'll just address this head on. I think there was certainly a lot of confusion on my end here. On around lap 20 of the Truck Series race, the NASCAR officials on the officials channel came over the radio and said that there were not going to be any front stretch interviews after the race in the Truck Series race. They said that there was not going to be any, I don't remember the exact words now. I've replayed it too much in my mind. But around lap 20 in that, there was a report by the main guy in the radio booth that said there's nobody is going to be doing any TV or radio interviews on the front stretch, that they're only going to be in victory lane. At no point during that did they ever indicate if that was going to be for the entire weekend. And now the other thing that was confusing about that, when I first heard that, just like you guys did, I never heard any indication that that was even going to be a situation up till that moment. I didn't hear anything from Pockris about it. I didn't hear anything from Gluck about it. And at the point that I tweeted that, I had no idea that I was breaking any news on this, because I figured, okay, I heard that, and I was posting it on there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to actually have interviews in victory lane. That's great. But I thought for sure that when I posted that, Pockris heard it, and he was going to tweet it, and Jenna Fryer or any of these other people, I'm sure somebody else heard it. I was very surprised that nobody else did, or at least anybody that didn't tweet about it. And so the entire third stage of that race, I'm thinking, it's like, okay, I know I heard that. I know I wasn't thinking that. And so about 20 minutes later, that's when I made the second tweet on that. And I said, look, no, this is a real thing. I'm not making a joke. I don't joke about, I keep things light. If you hear stuff from me like on that, I mean, I try to kind of balance that a little bit. But when it's during the race, I try not to, you kind of know if I'm joking about something or something like that. I don't joke about saying something that NASCAR's doing. If they're doing it, that's because I heard it on the thing. Because I have 1 year on the officials channel, 1 year on the last place drivers thing. So that was a situation there. So once it became clear that everybody was taking off with it, I'm like, okay, well, I know I heard it. I know I transcribed it. I don't know why nobody else tweeted it, because it's a big thing. And I don't think, and I didn't think that it's possible. I was thinking at the same time, it's like, okay, well, maybe this was reported earlier because I was at work, that day. So I don't know if it was reported and I just didn't hear about it. And by the time they reported it, it was just a reminder, and, everybody already knew about it and the officials doing that. And then, but again, it was surprising. It got posted on Reddit, and I'm like, okay, how is this the first time we've heard about this? How is this not caught by anybody? How is it not announced by anybody before the race or earlier in the day or even earlier in the week? These networks, they have to prepare these things well in advance, whether it's getting the drone out there to show the burnouts and all that. And, they had Vince Welch and all that doing the reports remotely. You could see that from there. It's not like they didn't know until the last second, what their arrangement was going to be. But it seems like that was the case once it got posted. So I don't know what was happening there with that. And I made clear once I heard it says, okay, at least for tonight, they didn't make any indication it was a permanent change. They didn't make any indication that it was an Xfinity race or Cup Series thing. And so I posted that. Now, when I was kind of remembering it in my mind. So I said, okay, well, maybe that first tweet was a little too short. So I'm putting it down there and saying, okay, no, look, this is what happened. And then by the Xfinity race, I was listening for them to say it again, because I was like, okay, well, maybe they'll remind them again and they'll be the same thing. When I didn't hear anything, I put a tweet up and said, look, I didn't hear anything else about them doing Victory Lane or that and all that. And it's true. They did do the interviews in Victory Lane, the Truck Series race. You saw that they didn't do the thing with Ryan Preece on the front stretch, and they did the guitar thing in Victory Lane. So that was the case. And then, of course, by the Xfinity race, that on top of it, I was out of the room by the time that race was over with. And then suddenly my phone's blowing up and you're saying, oh, well, you said there weren't going to be any more front stretch Victory Lane things. I'm like, look, I told you. I knew. I said that they said it was at least for the Truck Series thing. I made no indication that it was a permanent change. I was surprised that nobody else picked it up and said, oh, yeah, I heard that on the radio too. And, oh, yeah, that's just for the Truck Series race, or it's because of this. Nobody else picked it up. Completely surprised me. But it turned out to be, it was a thing that was actually happening. So, I mean, I just want to give you the full context on that, because I think there was some confusion on that. And that was not intended on my point. I was trying to be as clear as possible. I heard that they're not going to do a front stretch interview. I think it was a great change. I think the other positive from it is you saw from the response there, everybody was very pleased that they were doing it. And it's too bad it wasn't a permanent change, even for the Cup race today. But yeah, NASCAR never gave any indication that it was more for the Truck Series race. They didn't say it was specifically there. And I wasn't sure. Again, I was very surprised that nobody else had announced it or talked about it, or that anything was being, brought up the first time. I thought at the moment of tweeting that either I was the last to hear about it or anything else. And unfortunately, this has kind of been the trend the last couple of weeks here. Whether it was PRN incorrectly saying that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was out of the race when they were still working on the car and getting him back out there, or at the All-Star race where, Bailey Curry's car is getting towed to the garage area. There's a drone flying over with a perfect shot and nobody in the booth mentioning anything, and certainly not mentioning Jordan Anderson going to the garage area. Why all these things are getting missed, whether it's one thing or another, it's strange, because these are not small things. It's not just my little corner of the universe here where it's the last place finisher. If it's something about them not having TV interviews in pit lane, maybe it's just a one-off thing and this is just a fluke and it just turned out to be something there. But that seemed like a big thing, So again, if there was any confusion on that, I hope there certainly wasn't. But that's where it was on my end there. So I was very surprised. Again, I've been very surprised at what hasn't been a story lately. And I don't, I'm not the kind of person that goes out of their way to, say, oh, this is a rumor that this is happening and putting that out there. And, oh, I got breaking news on this thing or something like that. I try to stay away from that unless I'm personally seeing it. But this was here. This was something here. I figured, oh, well, maybe people on my feed would find out about it, but they probably hear about it somewhere else. So, yeah, I don't know what the situation was with that. I was very surprised by the response, but again, especially but the positive response. I think that was the biggest takeaway, that people were that enthused that they were going to be doing interviews on Victory Lane. People were that excited about it. I think that's fantastic. I think that's something that hopefully gets noticed by NASCAR, and maybe that does become a permanent change, because NBC is just as guilty as Fox of doing those stupid front stretch interviews. And it's just, and they, quite honestly, they suck. I mean, they're not the best interviews. Victory Lane should be the thing that everybody should go for. I mean, the whole thing is, you get into Victory Lane and whatever the track is. I mean, if the Victory Lane's on the front stretch, if it's between the drag strips like they did at Sears Point this year, or if it's some dedicated location, that should be the ultimate goal. And especially at Nashville, where they give out the guitars and, they're not going to bring that out to the front stretch for it. I mean, that tri-oval grass is massive. They had the tow trucks towing people through that because it was so big. That's kind of the other thing. But hopefully that at least started some conversation on that, and then maybe that gets covered in there. But I've re-looked at my tweet over there, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, I think it was pretty clear on that. I certainly stand by it, and especially the response below it. So that anybody that pulled up that tweet, they would see below it, like, look, okay, this is the thing I heard on the channel. They said it was at least for tonight. This is the first time hearing of it. I haven't seen any other, announcements or anything. And, whatever happens. But I'm just reporting what I'm hearing. I don't like doing secondhand stuff there because of that. So that's kind of where I was on that. So again, I hope that clears up. If there is any confusion from that yesterday, I hope that clears that up. Because that was something that was kind of at the back of my mind a little bit today. I didn't really address it today, because especially after they did the Xfinity interview yesterday, I figured they'd do the same thing today, and that turned out to be the case. So, yeah, but hopefully that changes, though. That'll be something else that needs to kind of come up. Let's see. I saw something else here come up. Let me make sure I missed that. Yes, Athletic Geek 89, thank you for your super chat as well. Smithley had a run today on the lead lap for a while. Yes, great run again by Smithley. Talked a bit about the Rick Ware efforts, especially a 53 car, which is kind of the forgotten one, kind of the fourth string effort there amongst the Ware entries. Car number you don't traditionally see in a lot of things. I think they're just going to finally make diecast of Joey Gase's car later this year. Good to see that program do well. I know Smithley in particular, I think he's a very underappreciated talent out there, whether you see his video he did with JonTron last year at the Roval, or I guess it was a couple years ago now, or, again, he's one I seem to constantly run into at the track. Did at Sears Point just a couple weeks ago for my first interview since really the end of Fontana in 2020. So, yeah, again, he's really working out there, especially to kind of bring in these different partners. The Victory Lane Quick Oil Change and Kendall partners are coming up for some other races later this year. I think Las Vegas is actually one of them, now that I think about it. But the rest of it's in that Sears Point article from a couple of years ago. But yeah, he does a good job. And much like JJ Yaley has suddenly become this grizzled old veteran here. That's much like Jeff Green in the Xfinity series, can just do what he needs to do to get a car into the field and get it the best run that he can. We saw this a lot with the 27 car last year. And even though this seems like it was just a one-off here to get him with Cody Ware and Road America, I'm hoping we see Yaley get some more rides, because he certainly had some good runs in the Xfinity series. And we'll talk about that too as we get into that division. But that's certainly one to talk about there too. So yeah, good for mentioning that, Athletic Geek. Looking further back here, Leo Silbert, thank you for your super chat as well. Love your documentaries, man. Please keep them coming. Yes, absolutely, more of them coming. Thank you for watching them for sure. And we're going to get more of those coming up for you. I've kind of taken a little bit of time off here since we got back from Texas before working on the next episode of Rise of the Field Fillers. But I do have content already assembled together on that, which will be on the history of Andy Belmont in the 2004 season, which I know raised some eyebrows. I know some of you, you certainly see the diecast from 1992, and you think, wait, Andy Belmont, what did he have to do with it? Just wait and see. That's going to be a good episode. And that was the one where I had 2 hours of interview content. So that's the first thing I'm going to be digging through to get that. I don't think it'll be a 2-hour episode when it gets to the end of it, although it's going to be tricky to figure out what's going to be cut out. But that'll be the next episode in that series. I might do a one-off video as well on this channel. I haven't done that in a while. We posted a couple clips from the races the last couple weeks, but keep an eye out for more content on here. Also, after the show tonight, I got to record a script for NASCAR Man that I've been putting off too much, so I'm looking to get that done, and hopefully we'll have another video that I'm narrating for him coming up here as well for you guys to check out. So more content is definitely on the way this summer, and keep an ear out for that. So we got that there too. Let's see. Alrighty. Let me get the Xfinity results here. Kyle Busch stomps the field again, getting his 100th Xfinity win. That's not the story we want to talk about, is it? We want to talk about Stephen Parsons. Stephen Parsons getting the first last place finish of his NASCAR career, driving the number 99, the Dogecoin Spring Greats car. Unfortunately, had an incident with David Starr in the middle stages there, hit the outside wall. Good to see him get out of the car there. There were some very hard hits in all three races this weekend, but certainly that was one of them. Unfortunate that was his first last place finish. He's had a couple of tangles here the last couple of weeks, which is surprising given how consistent he's been in the first part of his career. But it was a good opportunity to actually feature him on the site. I'm not a fan of seeing, really any particular driver finish in last place, but it always is an opportunity to feature talent that doesn't get talked about that much, and Stefan's certainly one of them. He sounds like from his interview at Texas, which I was able to put in the article posted yesterday, that he is going to continue to focus on the Xfinity series this year, as well he should. He's done a lot with the BJ McLeod effort, and hope that he's able to continue doing that going forward there and working on that program. It was unfortunate seeing the Mike Harmon team as well struggle during that race. Both cars having serious brake problems, foreshadowing really on what we saw today in the Cup Series race. Scary incident with Bailey Curry's car, that after they fixed the entire electrical system, after they kept shorting out batteries at Texas, they come out there to Nashville and have that incident where a couple of their pit crew members were hit on pit road. Hearing that one was actually admitted to the hospital just to kind of get checked over. Hopefully he's doing well now. Haven't heard any new updates on that. But the other two pit crew members apparently able to keep going at the conclusion of that. Kyle Weatherman, his teammate, also having brake issues around that same time, had to get brake fluid replaced in that car, dropping further back in the order. Brandon Brown, our folks over at kickingthetires.net, it was good to see them get their logo on the car. Even Dale Jr. mentioning them there along the way. Unfortunately, again, another right front tire issue, another issue with the brakes, and another turn behind the wall, dropping them into the bottom five. Joe Graff Jr. and Jay Buford collected an incident. Buford has had so many great runs. Looking forward to what he can do at Road America coming up, but unfortunately not a good run for him. And Austin Cindric getting collected in one of the day's incidents there, rounding out the bottom five. Looking further up the running order, Austin Hill bringing back the Hattori racing efforts entry on the number 61, getting another top 10 run. Not a career best run in that 9th place finish, but close to it. Good to see him turn things around on that. Jeremy Clements just on the outside of it. Will Rogers, I believe his first start in a couple years, driving for Sam Hunt in the 14th place finish for him. Ryan Sieg trying to get in the middle of the pack there, still not quite getting the runs that I'm sure he was hoping for with the switch to Ford this year. Tommy Joe Martins in the 20th spot. JJ Yaley, mentioning him earlier, another great run that he had going around the 15th or 16th spot there, I think as high as 13th. Ended up spun out in the last lap, dropped back over to the 22nd spot at the finish. Natalie Decker, not in last place, was running there for the first few laps, a couple seconds back in the field, was able to kind of survive the other incidents that happened during the race and finish higher up in the order. And other good runs from there. Justin Allgaier, I tell you, has become one of the most electric drivers in the Xfinity series lately. He seems to be one of the few drivers that has anything for Kyle Busch in these races. We saw it at Texas with the side-by-side battle. We saw an even more intense one, I think, yesterday in Nashville. So we'll see what happens going forward. I'm not a fan of Kyle Busch being in the Xfinity series, but whenever he's in there, hopefully Allgaier is going to have a good car for JR Motorsports and really put the spurs to him there in whatever race that's going to be. So that'll be another story that we follow coming up. Let's see. Other good runs from that. That's kind of the open and shut on that. Unfortunate for Parsons again at the back of the field there after 69 laps complete there. We touched on the Truck Series race a little bit earlier. Ryan Preece with the great win there for him. His teammate Todd Gilliland there getting in the second place finish. Looked like Gilliland was going to pull off another win like he had at Coda, but not quite able to get up there at the end of the race. Good runs for them. William Byron, your last place finisher, and a surprising run. Not his first last place run the Truck Series. I believe he had an engine failure when he drove for KBM in Atlanta a few years ago. But his first start since he had that championship contending season. Unfortunately, some bad luck kept him out of the title hunt there at the final stretch of the season. But William Byron, last place, the second of three, I guess, Rackley roofing trucks, including the 68 Clay Greenfield entry that didn't qualify, separate from the Rackley War effort that fielded both Byron and Barry's entries. Barry involved in the other scary accident that happened in that particular race with Derek Kraus, your pole sitter of the Truck Series race. Looked like he was getting out of the truck very gingerly after a scary wreck on the backstretch and hitting the wall a couple more times before the number 19 came to rest. Certainly hoping that he's recovering well and we see him compete in their next event, I guess during this next week at Pocono as part of the doubleheader weekend. So that'll be one to kind of look forward to. Hopefully he gets able to compete in that as well. Zane Smith in the fourth spot, Stuart Friesen in fifth. Good to see him bounce back from that wreck he had at Texas. Ty Majeski has continued to impress in that 66 truck. I think doing a part-time effort is probably helping him out, and especially ThorSport being as dominant as they have been in the Truck Series for so many years. Good to see him get another good run out there. Austin Hill before his top 10 in the Xfinity Series, getting ninth there. John Hunter Nemechek coming up from 34th on the grid to finish 10th after his time was disallowed. Still a really impressive run. Jack Wood, haven't talked about him a lot on these shows here, but the outside pole start and finishing in the 11th spot, certainly another great talent that GMS has put in there. I'm going to be really interested to see what they can do coming up ahead here in these few weeks. I don't know how many more races he's going to be in that 24, but it appears that Brett Moffitt committing to the Xfinity Series and opening up a ride for drivers of such as him to get into the field has really helped, again, their driver development program. And I certainly count on that continuing with their Cup Series effort coming up next year. Looking further back, Ross Chastain, 22nd, a little bit further back in the order before he was able to get back into the contention in the Cup Series lineup. Lawless Allen, Trey Hutchins, and Chris Wright rounding out the bottom five. Good to see Trey Hutchins back for the first time since a scary accident at Charlotte. Apparently they were able to finish the other truck that was not race ready in the garage since then. Couldn't quite make it out to Texas, but got back out here for Nashville. Hopefully we'll see him in Pocono and continue to run some more races from there. Unfortunately listed in the finishing under power, but multiple laps down, staying out of trouble there at the end of the race and finishing back in the order. Josh Berry, after his incident on the backstretch, finishing in the 19th spot. So you had that situation there as well. And let's see. I think that's about the open and shut on that. Again, just a big entry list there. Unfortunate to see Jennifer Jo Cobb withdraw because they had the issue with the lift gate on their hauler. Hopefully they get that straightened out for Pocono and, see what happens over there. But other entries sent home, like Jordan Anderson's entry. Yaley not quite able to make all three races after the 49 there for Cicerelli's team couldn't make the show. Would have been interesting to see what he can do, but at least they got the truck in one piece and they can do what they need to do with it coming up for Pocono and going forward from there. So that's a big part of all three of the races on that, but that was certainly one to certainly talk about there at the same time. Let's see, making sure I didn't miss that on there. Okay, excellent. So we'll get into our trivia section here in just a little bit. We got this already covered, the Truck Series race. And let's see, we talked about our coverage coming up. We got still kind of, I feel rejuvenated after last week. I'll tell you what, just kind of getting my feet back under me here this past week. But that's been good to do. So we're kind of getting back to that. I brought my wicker Carl Edwards hat out here that I found over at the hauler outside of the Texas track. Since Edwards was a past Nashville winner, I figured it was just as good a time as any to bring that out. So we got that on here this week. Still miss Carl. I would have been interested to see how Carl would have done this weekend with Cup Series car at Nashville, but maybe we'll have something coming around there. Really enjoyed, I guess I'll talk about this too at the same time, really enjoyed watching the SRX race yesterday, Superstar Racing Experience. I was very pleased with the broadcast. We had it on in the background at the Texas Media Center, but the volume was low, and they just had it on one of the small screens up there, so I didn't really pay much attention to it there, but really liked camera work. I thought was a good job. I thought that the Brad Daugherty and Matt Yoakum went working in the infield. I thought they were energized and as professional as they've always been, and getting the good quotes right when they need to have them. Everybody just seemed like they were having a good time. I still need to watch the rest of the main event there. I watched the heat races in the first part of the main, but I was pleased with what I saw so far. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in Eldora and beyond coming up. And again, our ARCA contributor, or ARCA staff writer, William Saki did the SRX for the opener, and we talked about it, and I'm certainly open to him doing more articles on that. So hopefully we'll have some more content on that coming up here. I believe it was Paul Tracy that was last in this one here, had kind of a rough outing, but look for more content on that at the lastcar.info website as well. So that was always really exciting to do too. But I liked it. And on that same subject too, I mean, certainly the comparison between the Fox and the NBC coverage this weekend, the FS1 coverage for the Truck Series race was pretty bad in general, like it's usually been. But on the Xfinity Series side, again, really, there's a lot. It's not perfect either, with the NBC coverage. I'm not quite as enamored with it as most people are. I think they fall into some of the other same problems where the commentary is more like a post-race show, like what I'm doing here. We're just kind of rambling about just random stuff rather than responding to what's actually happening on the track. There were some parts that were pretty good, though. I like that Junior is starting to respond to things that are happening at other parts of the track and directing the camera over there. That's a nice positive step. I think that he fell into the thing where he felt like he couldn't describe things that weren't on the screen. I'm glad that he's kind of, adjusted that a bit. I like that they broke out a commercial to have an update at what happened at that one part of the race there. I like the camera work. I thought it's still a little bit too close. I think they still use a lot of the wall cameras and tight zooms on the field when they could back it up just a little bit and see more of the field. They had a decent one on the back straightaway that did that, but in the tri-oval, it seemed like they were just kind of stuck with that. They weren't quite as stuck with it so much where Fox, where they kind of do that thing where it's on the wall, you just see a blur of color, and then the cars go in the opposite direction. That you just have such a hard time figuring out the strategy and the different lines that drivers are taking around there. I think if they had more infield camera angles, I think they would really be able to improve on that. I'm not a huge Steve Letarte fan. I think he kind of guides the fact that the broadcast becomes more like a post-race show a little bit. And I think part of that is because of Rick Allen's play-by-play being, kind of tending that direction as well. So, again, the both of them, if they kind of, Steve Letarte sometimes gets a bit more responsive as to something that's happening, but they don't kind of go off on a tangent about it. But Rick Allen's angle there, I still think he falls into kind of the Adam Alexander kind of situation where it sounds like he's not entirely comprehending what he's seeing, that he's just describing numbers and not really people, or he's only describing drivers when they're side by side at the front of the field, or he's only excited when somebody goes 3 wide and that's about it. These are trends that I think are larger, not just with Rick himself, but larger issues that these broadcasters tend to have. But again, there is an appreciably improved performance from the Fox broadcast. I think what you didn't see in the NBC broadcast was all this, laughing and all that stuff going on there where they're not taking anything seriously. I think one thing that was very much indicated there when you had the pit road incident that Bailey Curry had, I thought they handled that very well. I thought they appreciated how dangerous it is to be on pit road, that there was possibly some, that you had to be concerned about the crew members that were involved in that incident. Very different from how Fox handled the Trey Hutchins and Johnny Sauter incident, where they're just kind of goofing around and acting like they don't know what happened. And also, when it came to tracking the accidents that happened during the race, the camera crew was very much on it. The producer, I think, even in incidents like Chase Briscoe's, where he had a tire go down, and catching that incident when it happened and actually showing that they were looking at something else and moving the camera over there and panning it in and getting it at just the right point. They were very responsive to that. Same thing with Quinn Houff's accident. In a Fox broadcast, what would happen is they would catch Quinn's car after it was already in the wall with the tire in the infield and just go like, oh, I don't know what happened, and then never bring it up again. In this one, they had the tire come off. They found a reverse angle that showed the wheel was still on the car. I still would have liked if they showed the center of the wheel to show if it was center punched out. That was kind of a mistake. But I like that they didn't just drop it. They went back to it and said, look, we don't have all the information. We have the curiosity to find out what's happening, and that they went in and did it. That's a big improvement. So again, there are some problems still with the NBC broadcast, but I think the talent is there. I think the work ethic is there, and I think more of the professionalism is there, which really needs to happen. They don't treat their audience like they're a bunch of idiots. They don't make it juvenile. They don't treat it like we don't know what's happening. And they take the responsibility of trying to figure out what's happening. Those are huge improvements. And it's unfortunate that Fox is still doing the Truck Series side coming forward, because I think it lessens the enjoyment of the Truck Series broadcast from not doing that. And hopefully we're going to get a point where maybe they'll get some cues from NBC on that, but I'm not holding my breath on that, quite frankly. I think they need a hard reset on that side of the aisle. But versus a hard reset for Fox versus just a couple of things to tweak on NBC, that's an appreciable difference. And I'm, credit where credit's due on that. So that's kind of where I stood on that. And again, a lot of that connected with the CBS broadcast with the Superstar Racing Experience. I think they were all having fun with it. But again, they were getting the work done. They were getting the quote from Michael Waltrip. They're talking to Paul Tracy. They're showing the damage on the cars. I wasn't crazy about Danica Patrick's, play-by-play. I think I responded to that a little bit too soon, because when I first jumped into it, it sounded like she was kind of interrupting Alan Bestwick more, and Alan Bestwick was kind of playing along with it and just kind of, trying to kind of rationalize it a little bit. I think as the broadcast went on, she seemed, they seemed to kind of respond to their own different things, which was a little bit better. I think it kind of improved. I don't think I was just getting used to it. So again, I'll watch more of these and maybe it'll get better as it goes along. It could be just the fact that there's so many things that are new with this series and they're trying to figure it out. Not to say they don't have the talent to do it, of course, but something to kind of work that out there. But I think that's the only real issue that I really saw in those broadcasts. I enjoyed it. I like that they have the names on the sides of the cars. The roof numbers are okay. I think they're more identifiable that way. I guess the font could be a little bit bigger, but it's tricky because you have the Camping World logo. And of course, they have to get a good size bit of ad space there for the money they're putting into the circuit. So I don't know if it's like maybe making the name diagonal or something like that. Because that was a great thing with IROC is they had the really large. They probably had letters like yay big on the sides of these cars, and you could see it from like across the track pretty clearly. But we'll see if something works out on that. But I was pretty pleased with it. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely want to see more. So that'll be kind of that angle there. Yeah, she was better this week. I still haven't watched more of the one last week in Stafford. But it seemed like, again, they're still figuring it out. I'm not going to be too harsh on that. I think that would be a bit unfair. But that's kind of what we're looking at on that side. So let's see. Let me get this. Okay, I'm going to close this out. Make sure I don't close the stream. Okay, good. You got that still? Okay. All right. So we'll get into our, let's see. Yeah, we'll get into our segment on here with the trivia here. If you guys have any other questions, I'm just going to make this window bigger here in the meantime. If you guys have any other questions on the race weekend in general that I haven't covered or anything like that, I'll browse through the chat here as well and try to cover those along the way here. And we'll talk about this at the same time. All right. In the meantime, we'll do some show and tell here. Back with the code red again this week. So we're all set on that. All right. Bringing out the... Oh, hang on. Let me get that cleared out. All righty. Bringing out the old trivia thing from the late 90s here. Questions are from the late 90s, so some of them are universal or some of them have changed significantly. over the last quarter century. So we'll have different questions here. The category, go ahead and vote in the chat which one you would like. They are, for those of you who are new here, we got a good amount of people in here for this, so welcome aboard if you're new. The categories are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those categories again, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Alrighty, and as you guys vote in which category you'd like, our show and tell is a little bit more simple this week. I showed one of these on picture the other day. These are the best water bottles that have ever been made. I picked up a couple of these over in Texas, and this, of course, with the feature of our, there, I'll bring it down to lower the camera, our other episode in Rise of the Field Fillers, the car number 89, or the 21 back then, with Morgan Shepherd and the Wood Brothers on this. This is, again, falls in the category of merchandise that needs to make a comeback. You still have fuel canisters that look more like this. I don't know if you can drink out of this upside down, but I imagine you probably could. It's got a twisted top underneath it here. This part comes off, and then you got a screwable lid beneath it that's separate. It's like, I think it's a 32 ounce on this. And it's got a hole that you can push out of this and put like a lanyard or something through it so you can like hang it off here or something. But again, you know, kind of merchandise that kind of really integrates elements of the sport like this, or something very common out of the 90s. And I think these are just really hip. Plus, it's just kind of a neat thing to just kind of put somewhere. So, yeah, kudos over to the folks over at the track in Texas, or the independent tent across the track there had some of these here. And yeah, I think that these are just pretty hip. So classic kind of sports bottle. You got to see like almost this kind of nozzle, like even in the cup cars today, where they'll have like the old plastic straw and everything. You kind of see off camera, but this is kind of adding another element to it here. But it's good seeing which drivers they did. I did the tweet the other day showing which ones they made of these at the time. That you could get like Derek Cope or Ken Schrader. Pretty good cross section. I don't think they actually had a licensing agreement with Earnhardt, so I don't know if they ever made his, but they had Rusty and others. But these are just really hip. So yeah, I'm gonna have to, when we get, again, I mean, we're gonna have to, when we get a proper LASCAR headquarters set up here, once we get everything set up, I'm gonna have to figure out a place to put this on here, because certainly talk about Morgan Shepherd and his career. This was certainly one to pick up along the way there. So yeah, can you imagine if they made things like this? I mean, tell me in the chat if people made these today, and you could get ones with like Alex Bowman or, you know, Kyle Larson or something. You know, especially with the races being as hot as they've been lately these last few weeks. Tell me you wouldn't sling one of these things around here. That'd be pretty hip. So NASCAR, if you're paying attention, these are some of those things that we need to actually kind of bring back here. We brought back the sunshine, but we haven't brought back these yet. So we'll find out on that end. All right. So, hey, Alexander Benatti, hello from Brazil. Thank you for checking in there. Always like to hear from our international audience here as well. Favorite Cup paint scheme today? Tough to say. I liked Larson's a lot. I've said it before. I really like a paint scheme that integrates the color white really well. I know that white's not technically a color, but rather than just having like an unsponsored car or something like that, if they do it in such a way, it just looks really clean and it really stands out. Larson's car was very much, you know, symbolic of like the Michael Holligan car that Jerry Nadeau had, the Valvoline paint scheme that Johnny Benson had, Mark Martin's mini Valvoline cars. I mean, well, all three of these are Valvoline, of course. I mean, I guess Valvoline just does a good job with cars that have white on them. So that's probably part of it there. But, you know, if it's done really well, it really pops. I'm not really a big fan of Chase Elliott's paint scheme. I think that's going too far the other direction, where it has a little too much white on it. Denny Hamlin's kind of the same sense there. It just kind of looks kind of scattershot. For some reason, those don't look as good to me. But where white is kind of the accent on the car, that works pretty well. Or maybe it's just the front of the car. Even like William Byron's truck in the Truck Series race the other day, even though he had the engine failure on that, I thought it looked pretty nice. It had kind of a white transitioning to darker colors of blue towards the back. And, you know, Ryan Truex's Spa's paint scheme for the Nice team is kind of like that, where it does it pretty well. So those are kind of paint schemes that I like. And maybe they're not all my favorite ones, The Tide Ride is another good example. One of the things that made the Tide Ride look great was that it had that bright orange of the logo, that yellow ring, and then a white kind of back end. And they stuck with that for so many years with so many different drivers and teams, between Darrell Waltrip and Ricky Rudd, and then even the PPI Motorsports with the Ricky Craven and Bobby Hamilton Jr. and Scott Pruitt and all those guys. There's a reason that even as a throwback scheme, they kind of kept it that way. Obviously, Ricky Stenhouse's one wasn't a good version of that. I think that blue just didn't work with it. They should have just stuck with the orange, kind of like, well, what Eric Jones did at the dirt track race. That one was good. I thought they did a solid job there. So, yeah, those would kind of be I probably dominate Larson's from today, but yeah, there's other contenders for sure. William Byron's is one I'm not as crazy about. The Liberty University one, there's, again, it kind of falls in the Denny Hamlin category. It's a little bit too much white on there, and it doesn't quite work. But that's kind of where I'm looking at. Looking further back, the Prism Motorsports cars or JTG Darty's cars further back, the old Kingsford ones that Marcus Ambrose ran, those used white really well because they had interesting accents. I guess that's what's cool about having white on a paint scheme, is if you have a dark color as an accent, it really kind of looks sharper because the white itself already stands out, and you can have like a dark blue or dark purple kind of accents on those. Those look good. So that's kind of my nominee on that. Where are we in categories? I see a few for tracks. Let's see. Wild card, 2 for tracks. You drink it upside down. Is that? There you go. So we'll see. Oh, the unofficial voice of NASCAR. Well, I'm flattered, Al, but I'm not sure if that's entirely the case. There's a lot of voices out there, and I'm just happy to be one of them. So there you go. But we'll go from there. Well, let's see. I see 2 for tracks, 1 for teams, 1 for wild. Okay, 2 for wild card. Pits. Okay. Yeah, put some Citgo decals on. That would be cool. I guess that's the only real problem with it. It doesn't have the branding. I kind of like how simple that looks, though. And again, with the theme of simple white look on there, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, it's kind of, I've seen a couple for wild card, a couple for teams. I might do pits because we haven't done that in a while. Just kind of do a shake this up a little bit. Hang on. Let's do, hang on. There we go. And we'll jump into that. All right. Yeah, love the Gravedigger paint scheme. I mean, that one definitely was top 5 for sure. That looked really good. Even the yellow numbers were good. Because of course, you look at monster trucks, they don't really have numbers on them generally. Back in my day, we had USA 1 and Equalizer and Predator and Liquidator and all the Monster Wars one, Carolina Crusher, Barefoot. I mean, how many you can think of just offhand? Max D is a little after my time, with El Toro Loco and all those. We had Snakebite. Snakebite's one of the last new ones I remembered when I was following it. I kind of went more towards NASCAR after that, but those were good. Alrighty. Let's see. Okay, here we go. I think I jumped into pits here. We'll do some of these, just kind of make it a little more tricky, and maybe we'll switch up further down the line. So the first question here, what is the Evans cooling system's alternative to water as a radiator coolant? Let me read that again. What's the Evans cooling system's alternative to water as a radiator coolant? Oh, we are on hard mode here. So what's the Evans cooling system's alternative to water as a radiator coolant? Now, how specific of an answer are we looking for? I mean, this is where it gets tricky. Max D, Goldberg. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, see, those are a little bit after my time. Let's fill all the cars with Mountain Dew Code Red. There you go. I like that. I got to put some of this in one of these. I need to wash this one first, so I haven't done that. I don't know how long it had been at the hauler thing. These were all pretty dusty, but it's in good shape. I mean, I'd almost hate to use it because it just looks so nice, but yeah. Fan fuel or drink containers, Orange Park, Florida, 32073. I'm sure the company not around anymore, maybe got absorbed by Action or something, but they did a nice job on that. That's really cool. I don't think any of them were red though. I think most of them were white. Okay, we got guesses for antifreeze, alcohol, Prestone antifreeze, Gatorade, Code Red Mountain Dew, Moonshine, Wet All, vegetable oil, hockey pucks, antifreeze. Alrighty, what is the Evans cooling system's alternative to water as a radiator coolant? The answer is NPG. NPG. N as in Nolan, P, G. Okay, it wasn't. Okay, is that a brand of antifreeze? I mean, it seemed like antifreeze would be the most logical answer. But then, I mean, if it's talking about this one particular company, I guess it's one that they own. I'm not familiar with this one. Anybody more technically minded have heard of NPG? I don't think anybody guessed that. I don't know what NPG is. Yeah. Yeah, those of you who guess like, yeah, Prestone or something like that, like, yeah, that'd be closer to it. Some kind of freeze thingy. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, NPG. That's okay. Well, yeah, we're getting some hard ones. Maybe pits will be a good category here. We don't usually do it too often on the show here, but we'll see what else we get here. Okay, so that one stumped the group. Let's see what this one does. What workhorse engine was a direct descendant of Chevy's mystery motor? Ooh, here we go. Got a little history here. What workhorse engine was a direct descendant of Chevy's mystery motor? There we go. Any thoughts on Johnny B and the fast-ish red hot rod on Saturday nights? Yeah, love seeing him in the pace car for the SRX. That's really cool. Especially now that it seems like Benson's getting featured a lot more, which is long overdue. Certainly the fact that he's been helping Carson Hocevar out in the truck series, that's a big part of that too. And seeing Hocevar do so well. What workhorse engine was a direct descendant of Chevy's mystery motor? Okay, we got the 396, the Chevy small block, the 356 small block, the SB2, the small block, the Roush engines, Hemi, 358. Propylene glycol for the antifreeze question. There you go. Yeah, NPG is what it said. What workhorse engine was a direct descendant of Chevy's mystery motor? And the answer is the Rat. The R, or is it the RAT? It just says the Rat. Wow, these are too hard. The Rat. I wouldn't have guessed either of these. I would have. Nope. Did anybody get that one? I don't think anybody did. Does anybody know what they're referring to on this? This thing's just messing with us now. You know, I remember one of you guys said, like, yeah, let's do this on hard mode. I think you hit it on the head on that one. Yeah, another impossible one. Exactly. Round and round. Exactly. Yeah, there you go. All righty. Okay. Next question. We'll move on to this one. See if this one gets easier. What is a typical right front tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a super speedway? What is a typical right front tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a super speedway? So we're looking for a number on this one. Let me get some of this. I'm going to need a bigger bottle of this for the finish. All righty. What's a typical right front tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a super speedway? Okay, we got guesses for 28, 35, 24, 69, 420, 1500, 427, and a cubic inch crate motor. There you go. This is for the previous one. He run NPG and the Rat. Good question. Maybe they're all related. We're working our way down now. We're down to the tires, specifically the typical right front tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a super speedway. All right. The Rat was Chevy's 427 cubic inch crate motor. The Mouse was the 358 cubic inch displacement crate motor. Okay, I did not know that. What's a typical right front tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a super speedway? The answer is 55 pounds. It's not even PSI. What a tricky question. 55 pounds, it says. Anybody get that? Oh, yeah, Tony Quito, you got it. 55. There you go. Nailed it. There you go. Typical right front tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a super speedway. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. We'll see if you can get this one here too. Let's see if you get this one, Tony. All right. Next question. What's a typical left side tire pressure for a Cup car on an intermediate track? What's a typical left side tire pressure for a Cup car on an intermediate track? All right, let's see. Typical left side tire pressure. Left side tire pressure. Doesn't even say left front or anything. Left side tire pressure for a Cup car on an intermediate track. Alrighty. Used to know this by heart from the Papyrus Sims. Yeah, there you go. Okay, we got 28, we got 38, we got 12, we got 30, over 9,000. What? 9,000. Okay, next question here is the answer for what's a typical left side tire pressure for a Cup car on an intermediate track. The answer is 30 pounds. 30 pounds. Maserati 9, I think you got it first, I think. Yeah, there's 28. You were close, Zachary Leffler. 30 pounds. RD Fox, 76. You got 30. Tony Quito, you got that one too. 30. You were right in your first guess. So there you go. You got both of them. There you go. So there you go. Excellent. All right. Well, it's kind of a later show tonight with the race here. So let's do a couple more questions and then wrap up here for the evening. All right. Oh, here we go. Another one. We got to do this one. What's a typical right rear tire pressure for a Cup car on an intermediate track? What is a typical right rear tire pressure for a Cup car on an intermediate track? Okay. Tony, go for it, man. Yeah. NASCAR Racing 2003 prepared me for this very moment. Yep, you're all set. What's a typical right rear tire pressure for a Cup car on an intermediate track is our next question. I'll give you guys some more times on this. Okay, Tony's got his guess in. We got other ones here, 35, 40, 45, 25. MST 3K. Okay, we got all the guesses. It's a typical right rear tire pressure for a Cup car on an intermediate track. There you go. Alrighty. What's a typical right rear tire pressure for a Cup car on an intermediate track is the question. The answer is 43 pounds. 43 pounds. The King. Wally Dallenbach. John Andretti. Bubba Wallace. Eric Jones. 43. Who's first on that? Let's see. Jameson Rogers, I see you got it. Are you the first? I think you might have been. 35, 50. Keto got 40. You were close to it. 42 for Alexandra Benatti. 45. Yeah, I think Jameson. I think you were the first one on that. So kudos to you. There you go. Right on, man. Okay. All right. Here we go. Yet another one. All right. Let's do this one too. What is a typical left side tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a short track? What's a typical left side tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a short track? That is our next one. There you go. A typical left side tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a short track. All righty. Okay, we got guesses. We got 37, we got 27, 26, 24, 8, 25, 28. Alrighty. What's a typical left side tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a short track? The answer is 18 pounds. 18. I don't know if anybody got that one. Let's see. 20, 25, 23, 32, 15. Chips Never 957 looking for the win on the Price is Right rules here. 8 pounds by Maserati 9. You were also trying it. You put 8 pounds. 18, it says. Yeah, that's awfully low. 18 pounds, 1-8. Typical left side tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a short track. Yeah, 18 is the correct answer. Yeah, tough one. Tough one. All right, here we go. We'll do this one. This will be the last one for tonight. It's another one of these questions, so this will be a good way to kind of round it out. So we'll leave it on this one. Okay, here we go. Brace yourself, folks. Last question of the evening. What is a typical right side tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a short track? What is a typical right side tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a short track? That is our next one. That is our last one for tonight. Yeah, we might do pits a couple more times here. Maybe we'll do it for Pocono with our doubleheader coverage next week. That'll be exciting. What's a typical right side tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a short track? Less pressure, more grip. Yep, there you go. Chips Never, you're right on it. Okay, we got 25s, we got 23s, we got 28, we got 15, 24, 32, 14, 35. Yeah, this one was tricky. Chips Never, you were closest without going over on that last one. So we'll see if you get it on this one. Or if Tony's going to get you again here. What's a typical right side tire pressure for a Winston Cup car on a short track? Alrighty, and the answer is, last question tonight, the answer is 28 pounds. 28 pounds. 2-8. Davey Allison. 28. Zachary Leffler, looks like you got it. Oh, Papa Dragon, 69. You were just ahead of him on that. Papa Dragon, looks like you were the first one on that. So Papa Dragon, there you go. Zachary Leffler, you got it. Anybody else? RD Fox, 76, you got it. James Malloy, you got it. A few of you got this one. I guess this one was too easy. Yeah, tricky questions. Tricky questions. I'm sure, again, the preferred weight back then is different from it is right now. So, okay, so I'm going to leave it right there for this week, folks. Maybe we'll pick up on that category again and see if we get some more questions next week in our next show, which is going to be after the Pocono doubleheader, where we have 2 Cup Series races for the price of one. an Xfinity Series race and a Truck Series race, and it will be very interesting. We'll have articles for all 4 races next week. Pending post-race inspection will be a Quinn Houff article tonight to go with the Xfinity and the Truck Series articles this week. If you haven't seen those articles, they're already on the website at lastcaron.info. For more on my Twitter account, check out Last Car on Brock. If you want to check out the Patreon, patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. In the meantime, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Have a safe week, everyone, and I'll see you back here next week for the Tricky Triangle. And we'll find out if Kyle Larson can win those both, or if somebody is going to be up to the task to keep that number 5 out of victory lane. So take care, folks, and I'll see you next time.